Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Echoes of the Soul radio show, brought to you by Matrix Productions. I'm Dagny Grant, and my co-host Beth, Donnelly, and I are really looking forward to a fun and fascinating show today as we speak with our very special guest, Sharon Sayler, the author of numerous books, the most recent of which is her children's book, Pinky, Chenille, and the Rainbow Hunters, which just launched this week. First, I want to say hello to my co-host. Hey, Beth, good to see you as always.
Hi, Dagny. Yes, it's really neat to be able to see all three of us on one screen.
It is, it's kind of fun. As our audience knows, we typically do this on air, not on camera, and so this is a really kind of a fun and interesting variance for us. It looks like my lighting is going on and off as if I'm in a lightning storm, but we're just going to ignore that because here we go doing this. So hey, Sharon, how has your week been going with your launch this week? Pretty wild, I bet.
Wild and awesome and crazy. We hit #1 in several categories on Amazon. So it's just been like, hang on, Mr. Toad, it's a wild ride.
Man, I bet. Well, congratulations for that. I no doubt it's such an adorable book, and we'll be giving a link to where people can go get that a little bit later in the show. Before we actually start talking to you about some of the about the book and about some of the other things that we're going to chat about today, let me just let our audience know a little bit more about you. I'm going to actually read from the screen your bio. So I'm not even going to pretend like I'm not reading. Some people read from a screen and it's like, oh man, they're so reading. I'm reading.
You're honest.
Sharon, yeah, that's right. Sharon Sayler, MBA, teaches something she's called courageous, conscious communication skills, and we'll ask her a lot about body language, as she's one of the international best for body language experts at globalgurus.com. I love that. She is an international communications trainer, speaker, best-selling author, and CEO of the strategic communications firm Competitive Edge Communications, working with diverse groups such as Delta Airlines and Yale University. Besides teaching you to become a stronger, more influential communicator, she teaches teams to understand each other's strengths, to create high-functioning groups, and trains public speaking and sales skills. I know that's something that's so valuable to teach at businesses. So I bet they just love that when you come to do that. The Authors Show voted Sharon one of 50 nonfiction authors you should be reading in 2011. She's a published author of 8 books. A favorite for readers is her title, What Your Body Says and How to Master the Message, which has been translated into 7 languages and is used in universities around the world. And if that's not enough, she is also the host of Autoimmune Hour podcast. And as I said at the top, her first children's book is Pinky, Chenille, and the Rainbow Hunters, which just launched this week. So we're really so excited for you. That's so great. We have children's books in common, and we know how exciting launch week is. So we share in your excitement about that. We're going to talk a lot about body language today, and for our readers who may not be or our listeners who may not be familiar with this topic, body language has been defined as the process of communicating non-verbally through conscious or unconscious gestures and movements. So everybody's really familiar with body language in one way or the other. They may just not be very familiar with the science behind it, the kind of the art of body language. And so, Sharon, we are really glad to have you here today. Thanks for coming on during what we know is a really, really busy, wild week for you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's just a joy to be with you guys always. So I love talking body language. You guys know I geek out on it. So
well, yeah, I mean, let us, tell everybody about what got you interested in body language in the first place.
Chance. Is that a very good answer?
No, it's a great answer. It's, you never know what triggers our interest in certain topics, right?
Yeah, I had an opportunity. I was going through a really rough time in my life 20 so years ago. Well, 20 plus years ago now. Wow. Time flies. And my friends know about me. If Sharon's down, or just distract her. Oh, excuse me, guys. I think I've been talking too much this week.
Yeah, I bet you've been talking a lot on the phone and stuff.
So anyway, they said, distract her. And they took me to what is known as an NLP weekend. And that's just sort of an introductory class into neurolinguistic programming. I had no idea what that was. It was completely foreign to me. But during that time, they had a guest speaker come in on a Saturday morning. And he was one of the world's experts in nonverbal communication, Michael Grinder, John Grinder's brother, the founder of NLP. And they approach the world very differently. John likes to say he's, sort of changes the inside and the outside changes. Michael is nonverbal, so it's like you change your outside communication and the inside changes. Just different ways to the same.
Both of which are so true.
And they both work. So,
yes.
And I like working with them together, because that's when you get the strongest change.
Right.
But anyway, I was mesmerized. I couldn't stop staring, I guess. And at the break, he came up to me, and this room was like 50 people or so. And I have to tell you, I'm the shy, introverted one that sits in the back and sort of takes notes, like, don't notice me. I'm interested, but don't notice me. Still am. He came up, whispered in my ear, let's go for a walk. I'm like, you feel like the teacher's like, what did I do wrong? That's the first thought in your head.
Right. Like, oh,
okay.
no, what?
I'm in trouble now.
Yeah, exactly. The little girl went, oh no, I'm in trouble. So we went for a walk. It was delightful. It was like a psychic reading in a way. He proceeded to tell me that, he thought I was in the arts, and at the time I owned a graphic design and marketing company, so I was. Told me that I was going through a particularly difficult time in my life, which obviously I was. And I accused my friends of setting this up, but they swear they did not. They were as stunned as I was. And when we got done from the walk, he sat me back down, whispered in my ear, and he said, oh, if you'd think with your mouth closed, you'd look more intelligent.
Oh, great.
So I guess out of 50 people, this is what I'd been doing. And as he says now, it was totally distracting him, but I was so mesmerized, but this is what I was doing. So, granted, you don't look too intelligent, right? I tell you, he had me hook, line, and sinker, though. It was like, I got to know more. Man.
That's right. I got to know more about this guy and what he's doing. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it turned out that he was actually needing help with graphic design and marketing. So I started doing that, getting into it, getting more and more involved in his work, started editing his books, co-wrote a couple of books. And throughout the whole process, I was really enjoying it. And when you have a mentor who really loves you, that's when they give you wings and say, it's time. Right. And about 10 years into our arrangement, where I was, doing so much and learning so much, it was just fabulous mentorship. I couldn't have asked for a better mentorship. He started encouraging me to go out on my own. I had been helping him and his clients and working with educators and things. And he started encouraging me, find your own tribe, find your own. And it was so wonderful, because as much as I love working with educators, as I started doing that, I got an opportunity to speak to a small group of professional women, 9 professional women, on an evening in what I call a salon. I love doing those, where you're in somebody's home and you could just answer people's specific questions. That's just so juicy.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so juicy because you can answer people's specific questions. It was that moment where you're home. I don't know if you've ever had that. Have you guys ever had that moment?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I think that was just so interesting that you had your mouth open and you were speaking. And I was just wondering, if we want to change or correct the way we're being perceived, do you have any advice that you can give listeners about changing those kinds of body language, nonverbal cues, either conscious or unconscious? I guess if they're unconscious, you need to be aware of it first.
Right. I'll tell you, I was not aware that was sort of my go-to mesmerized face. I had no idea. I still notice that occasionally I do it, but now that I'm aware of it, and I just find that moment where I'm inside just processing it all and I'm mesmerized. Oh, okay, where's my mouth? Close my mouth. So it doesn't stay open as long.
But it's great feedback. It's really very good feedback. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think the biggest thing is listen to what your friends say to you. A lot of people come up to me with this question. Why do I always hear, or why do people always say, fill in the blank? Like one woman came up to me down in Florida when I was speaking at NABO, she says, why does everybody think I'm judgmental? Like, well, give me a second. I don't know. I just met you, like 2 seconds. But we had the opportunity to talk back at the office the next day. And in just doing some exploratory questions with people, you can begin to understand how somebody thinks. And that's when they go inside. Remember, I said mesmerized, that's going inside as well. And when I asked her how questions, she would make this face. And she made it so well that there were actually lines, embedded in her face. She'd been doing this forever. She did this. Well, and hers was so judgmental. The minute I saw it, I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture, because I got to show her the face. Because the minute she saw the face, and of course, the one thing that we've learned in communication is when it's something very close and personal like that, always speak about it in the third person. And so here's my phone. I don't have a picture on it, but I held it up and I said, if you saw this face, now obviously it's her.
Right.
What would you think? And instead of, this is your face, this is what you're doing. You can say, if you saw this face, what would you think? And I looked at the phone. I didn't look at her, which gives her permission to feel whatever she wants to feel. Because eye contact really inhibits emotion in people. Like if you and I are talking and I say something, like, well, this is your face, and I keep steady eye contact with you, it doesn't allow the other person to go wherever they have to go energetically.
Totally, because then they have to also be worried about what you're thinking of them at the same time that they're trying to assess the situation. Absolutely.
Yeah, I call it saving face. It's really important. And so I'm looking at this, and she goes, oh my, she takes the phone. She goes, oh, that is a judgmental face. But I went on to explain to her that it's not a judgmental face. Yeah, you and I.
It's a thoughtful face.
Well, she was high systems and high process. There's there's an assessment tool called the DISC, and I love it. I use all of the assessment tools, the Colby and the Myers-Briggs, but only as background information for people. And there's this part of DISC that's about high systems, high process, and then the other side of that curve is about taking risk. And it was so fascinating to me that on the bell curve, she was so high systems and process. The minute you asked her a how question or a what question, she would go inside and just start doing like step one, how. She wants me to know how this is done. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. She is just like writing this mental checklist. She didn't know that was what her thinking face was doing. And so I texted her the photo. She showed it to her boss the next day. And once he realized that face was not about him, everything completely shifted. They had a good laugh. He said, oh my gosh, I thought all these years you'd hated every idea I'd ever proposed to you. And really all you were doing was trying to do a good job.
Which is really important. I mean, I think that's really important in people, in talking to people about body language, because one of the things Beth and I were discussing earlier this morning was the fact that some people think they can read you by your body language, and oftentimes it's not really. I was saying to her that I was watching some video of she and I where she and I were in a meeting and we were testing video. I don't remember what we were doing, but I was focusing on doing geeky stuff on the computer at the time. And I remember it was remarkable how like kind of angry I looked. I just looked, but I was just concentrating. It was just, I was just thinking and concentrating. And, but I remember even being surprised at how, at my facial, structure. So that was funny.
Apparently, I didn't notice.
Well,
and she didn't even notice.
So.
She was playing with her dog, apparently. So.
Well, let me tell you something about that, though. You guys are good friends, and you're used to each other. So you're just like, oh, that's Beth, or that's Dagny. That's how we say around our family members, too, where other people might go, what was that? Oh, well, that's just Sharon.
Right.
And so it's a lot of times when our thinking face isn't registered, but it unconsciously can be registered. Like the boss had been thinking it was personal. He loved this employee enough that it was maybe slightly annoying, but overlooked.
Right.
And she actually called me the next day and said, "You saved my marriage." I showed the picture to my husband, and he too thought I hated every vacation we'd ever taken. And so, even though we go, "Oh, that's just Sharon," it's still registered unconsciously, like into that, "What's that about?" file. We may not register it into, "Oh, my feelings are hurt," or "They're constantly doing this," or "They're constantly doing that." We may not register it into the passive aggressive file, but we still register that into the, "I don't know what to make of that" kind of file. And so sometimes things can just stew for a long time before we think about it. And one of my big things I absolutely geek out on constantly, people are saying, "Teach me to read body language." And I say, absolutely not. Teach yourself what your body language is sending, and because you're probably part of the problem. you know it's much easier to know what your body language is saying and your outcome and your intention with your body language than sitting there going, "Oh, that person's mad at me." Well, no, they could have indigestion. They could be, thinking about some very significant problem. They could be cold. So until you know patterns and context, it's really tough to read people. I get kind of annoyed with that.
Sharon, just knowing that people aren't always the way they appear is really helpful. I was telling Dagny about an incident that happened with my choir. They were singing and everybody was doing a great job, and somebody in the front row had this really kind of awful look on their face. So it really kind of disturbed, and she had that look kind of during the whole concert, and the choir members were saying, "Oh, did you see that lady in the front? I don't think she's really enjoying this concert." And I said, "Oh, don't worry about it. She's probably the way she processes things." And they said, "Oh, okay." And then after the concert, who showed up to tell us what a great job we did? That lady, the one that was sitting in the front that everybody thought was totally out of it, but she loved it.
Couldn't have possibly hated it more, was what she looked like, right?
You can't always tell. So I think you're right in telling students they need to really, take a step back a bit and say, well, they could be going through something or whatever,
Oh, absolutely. And you say you can't always. I say you can rarely tell, because we really don't know other people's intentions. We don't know their histories. For heaven's sakes, they might have a facial tic or, have some sort of health problem that creates that face that they have no control over. So I always tell a lot of my students who have trouble with this concept, I give them a Q-tip, the Q-tip with cotton swabs, the brand name. And I put it in their pocket and I say, "You carry this with you everywhere," because that becomes an anchor for quit taking it personally. And it's really, Michael Grinder taught me that years ago, and it's been so valuable just to understand life is so much easier when we give people the benefit of the doubt and quit taking our body language personally. I mean, of course, unless they look at you and say, "Sharon," Sharon, then you can take that personally. But
well, yeah, it was another one of the things that Beth and I were talking about was sometimes people may be, seated, away from you or toward you, or even have their arms folded, or a variety of things because they have a bad back, because they have an issue with a back or a hip or something, and they're literally, that's the comfortable position, is arms crossed because their shoulder hurts or something, and you never know. I think that's pretty standard when you see somebody with your arms crossed. You go, "You're not listening. You're not, you're not open to this idea." That's right. You're closed off.
yeah.
And, it's not, just because we're giving some options to the variance of body language doesn't mean that there aren't some standard kind of concepts to it that are I guess
you're feeling energetically and emotionally that they're closed off to you. Like every time you ask a question, you get some odd response that doesn't fit with where you think it's going.
Right.
Absolutely, this may possibly mean closed off, and so you want to change what you're doing, but it can't just be taken in isolation. Are all the other responses you're getting during this conversation not adding up?
Right.
You can even feel it energetically, like they're just not connecting. Well, then maybe. I mean, I'm not saying that this doesn't mean closed off, but more often than not, they're doing something else. It's not about closed off. But that if you're getting other clues, then pay attention to it.
Well, that's one of the things that I was wondering is if when you speak to groups, what are some of the key things that you want to make sure that people understand about body language when you do presentations?
The first one I always say is context, content, and intention on both sides. And we have to set an intention as a good communicator of what is my outcome for this. It could be that you have to discipline an employee. So you could say, well, my outcome is, going to personally feel a little bit harsh, but that's okay. I mean, we have to have difficult conversations on occasion. Right. Or my outcome is that we both leave with a great networking connection, or whatever your outcome is. So you have to set your intention and the outcome, and then understand, depending on the context, meaning where you're located. Like maybe you need to discipline somebody in the moment, and other people are around. That makes it much tougher than it does in private. So you need to be aware that depending on your context, where you are, is going to change the outcome of the conversation. So my first thing is, before we read body languages, start kind of hallucinating, I call it, make sure that you understand that, okay, what was my intention? What is my outcome that am I going for? And what is the context that this is being given in? And then you can hallucinate. What might their intentions be? And I always say, give yourself 3 or 4 options of what their intentions might be. Because you can't just say, well, their intention is blah, blah, blah. Unless they've told you specifically, please don't hallucinate on that. But you can sometimes come up with what might be their whys in this conversation too. So that's my first thing about body language, which obviously has nothing to do with nonverbal communication, but it's so critically important to know.
It's important, very important. I also was thinking about gesturing and cultural variances throughout the world. And I know you travel a lot, and my husband and I do too, with our music. And one day we were in Italy trying to cross the street, very, very a lot of traffic.
Yes, a lot of traffic in Italy. I know. Crazy traffic. And,
let me show you how an Italian crosses the street. Please do, because we couldn't get our feet even a little bit into the street. And he just walked out with all confidence, his arms kind of extended, walking all confident. And so we just followed him because it was really not, we weren't comfortable with that as Americans. You wait for a clearing and then you walk across. But there's so many of those kinds of things throughout the world. And I wondered if you could tell us something about, your travels and what you've experienced with that.
Oh, great question. I'm glad you bring that up, because you run into it here in the States too, just because there's so many cultures. Right. You run into it here in the States too. There are certain hand gestures that I suggest not, just don't use them. They're fine here in the States, the thumbs up, the okay, the okay signal. Even the peace sign. What was that? I don't know. Even the peace sign.
Live long and prosper.
Yeah, the live long and prosper, whatever. I suggest just don't use those, especially, if they're fun and at home, okay. But in business situations, use the 3 what I call socially accessible hand gestures. The first one is the palms up. Now, of course, you wouldn't do it here at your shoulders. I mean, it's down at your waist, but here on video, it's a little awkward to show you in the right angle, but it's the upward palm gesture. This is all about sharing. This is all about open conversation. This, and the hand can go back and forth. It would go back between Beth and I if we were standing there talking. I'm like, so Beth, what do you think? And that's like handing her the mic, and then you bring it back to yourself. And one fun thing to do that I love about body language. So Beth, bless you, I love you, this, but I'm going to use you. And so I hand the mic, like, so Beth, what do you think? And she starts chatting.
Well, this is what I think, and I really try to mirror what you're doing.
And and maybe she's getting a little long-winded in my mind. Without saying a word, I just bring my hand back to myself, and that's sort of like, it non-verbally gives her the message that I've just taken the mic back. So,
I love that.
So understand, nonverbal communication is really powerful. She doesn't know that that's what just happened, but she'll probably start to wind up her point really quickly when that happens.
That's
And
so
the hand is
fascinating.
removed.
Remember this, Dagny.
Then the other two really popular and are, I won't say complete, nothing is 100% in nonverbal, but it's been socially acceptable in all my travels. So the upward palm gesture, great for any sort of conversation, even when you don't speak the same language. It's a nice sharing gesture. The next one is, I'll call this as serious, and it's the side palm gesture. This is not the hatchet. We see politicians do the hatchet all the time. That is really confrontational, so be aware of that one. But this is just the downward, the side palm gesture, and it just means this is serious. It's not quite as open and friendly and sharing as this. This is probably more open to debate, open to negotiation kind of gesture. And then the one that's really powerful, so I always say,
And I can, I just to interject, I can see that actually being a very effective state shift. Just when you see somebody do that, their mind automatically just focuses more intently because you just did something they didn't expect.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I really like that. That's great.
And then the last one I would say use with care because it's very strong. It can, depending on context, revert people back to adolescence or childhood, but it's very powerful. I see it a lot when I see people testifying before Congress, which I find fascinating. And that's the down palm gesture. You could see it with two palms or just one. Now, granted, up here by my face, it looks very awkward. This would be down by your waist, where you normally hand gesture. But it just says not open to negotiation. It's just very powerful sort of stop signal. And people, and you'll notice too when you talk, and I can't help it, it's just not unconscious. When the hand gesture goes like this, you'll hear my voice changes. It gets a little bit sterner, and I'm not doing that consciously. It just does it.
It's an alpha thing. It's like somebody like shaking someone's hand and putting your palm over the hand is I'm alpha. That whole nonverbal communication. Yeah, interesting. That's interesting.
I love the science of handshakes. It's fascinating.
The science of handshakes is really fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've had a lot of experience that with the last few months too. I just love that.
Yeah, we have. I've noticed that our current president does this thing where he literally shoves his hand under the other person's hand and then grabs it really hard. And he literally does an underhand handshake.
Well, what he's actually trying to do is turn the hand over, and that's an alpha thing. He's actually trying to get a good enough grip to turn the hand over.
Oh, and he does.
Yeah, yes. If you're taken by surprise, you've seen some people now realize that's what he's been doing, and I just love it because I've seen the progression of the recipient and how they've changed in this, and I love it because I go, oh, someone taught them the game of handshakes,
Right.
and so a lot of them don't allow their hand to be turned. And as a woman, I've had that happen to me because oftentimes, like, I don't know, in corporate, sometimes you get that you're just a woman kind of thing going on. And they shake your hand to see how alpha you are.
Right.
And if you don't allow your hand to be turned, and I'll tell you, sometimes it feels like your wrist is going to break.
Yeah.
But if you don't allow your hand to be turned, then all of a sudden there's a new respect. It's fascinating. I love the science of handshakes.
Yeah, it is really fascinating.
Yeah.
The science of handshakes. One of the things, we were talking about is the misleading cues. What are is that one of the things when you speak to groups that you talk about as well? I guess just in our audience watching this, I'm wondering what are kind of the most important pieces of them being able to just really easily kind of become more conscious of what they're seeing. Well, let me just ask this a little bit differently. In your study of body language, is there anything in particular that you found to be kind of surprising to you?
Oh, I'm constantly surprised. I love it. I constantly watch people, and then I watch for the response of the group, and then I look to see if it's a pattern by that person. If it's a one-time thing that they do that I go, well, that was interesting. What does that mean? Because I can't, when I see it just once, I can't ascribe any meaning to it, right?
Right.
Because,
right.
I don't know what was that about. It could have just been a movement.
Right.
But when I begin to see a pattern of it, that's when I get fascinated, and I always begin to go, wow, that was powerful, or that was interesting. There's a public speaker who is what I call on the sort of the sell from stage circuit. You might be familiar with that circuit where people go to hotel rooms and, they come and you do the free web and seminar thing and
Absolutely.
sell from the stage. Yeah. Well, there's this, I love going to those, sort of like I enjoy TV preachers, because they have the best nonverbal communication. They know what they're doing.
Right.
Well, this person I wasn't familiar with, but I still was fascinated, and I dragged a couple of friends and we went. And I just really kind of just partially listened to what's said, just so I can keep it in context. But here again, it's going to look awkward. So imagine this is down by your hip. The right hand is out in the open gesture we talked about, and the left hand is doing this, which is the give me sign. So that left, I'm going to stand up. This is going to be kind of awkward. You're only going to see me.
All good.
It's the left hand is doing this, and the right hand is doing this while he's talking.
Right, sure.
So the thing to understand about that is that he's telling you in very favorable terms, like, I'm going to give you this, and you're going to get that, and you're going to get this with the right hand. And he's moving it in a big gesture.
You're going to reciprocate.
You're going to reciprocate by giving me money. And so it's those unconscious little things that most of you are watching his mouth, his face, his PowerPoint, his beautiful gestures out. Well, unconsciously, your unconscious mind takes in everything. There's been studies that show that you can take people's driving, and the unconscious mind, when they begin to do things like hypnosis and regression, realize that you've seen far more than you think you've seen. Consciously, you go, I don't even remember the car in front of me. I just know I got from point A to point B and it was bad traffic. But then they begin to tap into your unconscious mind, and they're able to find out, well, gosh, she knew it was a black Subaru in front of her, and there was a green truck next to her, and the California plate on the other side. It's fascinating. So the unconscious mind is taking all of that in. And to me, I was like, wow, I kind of geek out. That's such a cool movement to know about, because now I can be alerted and aware. Okay, next time I see somebody doing that, what are they wanting me to give them?
So interesting. Well, and that's one of the things I was thinking about when you said something a little bit earlier, is that just the idea of being mindful of what's happening in the moment, instead of worrying about what happened yesterday or what may or may not happen tomorrow. If you're mindful in the moment, you're not only have a better chance of being grateful and actually creating that juice in your life, because you're actually living today rather than not, but also it gives you the opportunity, when you're mindful, to actually be aware of what your body language is. Absolutely. But otherwise, you're just not. You're just kind of a drone going through the motions,
NLP teaches us that the response you got is the message you sent. And I love that. It applies to body language too.
The response you got is the message you sent.
Mm-hmm. So say you say something to someone and you think it's just completely, neutral. You're just chatting. And all of a sudden somebody goes, no, that's exaggerated. A shock. Sometimes people just pull their chin in a little bit. You'll see it right here. You'll always see it in the neck muscles when someone's in shock. Confused is a little bit more like pulled back and either tipped, or they look side to side. I don't know if you can see my eyes going side to side in my glasses. So you'll see these minor, I exaggerate for the video, but we'll unconsciously pick those up. And your brain's going, what was that about? Well, you shocked them, you confused them. Annoyed is a little bit different. You'll see all sorts of things, like maybe even an instantaneous eye roll. Not too long ago, there was
a pursing of the lips, a little bit of
a pursing of the lips, anything like that. And that's the message you got. That's the response you got, is the message you sent. So it's like, then it's time for you to rewind the videotape, going, well, what did I just say?
Right. How can I rephrase that?
Did I offend someone culturally? What just happened? And that's the critical point, especially if it's a very important relationship. When you notice that, it's time to check in with the other party.
Pay attention. Right. Pay attention.
And as you get really good at that, you can recognize those little cues as you're talking and maybe reframe it right away. And
Right.
I find that's really, really helpful in coaching, because you know what that person is thinking. In many ways, you might intuitively know it, but the body language will also be a really good indicator of that. And I had another question I wanted to ask you, though, because I have heard you talking about acting as if. And way back in the day when I was a communications major, we went through a lot of that kind of thing. And then also as a music teacher, acting as if you were the character has been really effective for me. And I like that. But as I became more involved in the transformational field, it went from acting as if to stepping into the energy, into your power. And so I was wondering if you have any thoughts on body languaging being really related to the law of attraction.
Well, I'm not an expert in the law of attraction, so I'll tell you what I know, and you two are, so I'll let you take it from there, okay? What I know about body language is oftentimes our body is sending messages all the time. And I had a friend come to me one time, and my first thought was, gosh, I thought he was taller than that. And then I began to look at him a little bit more, and I see that he's sort of hunched over. And I'm talking to him, and he's telling me how life is beating him down. So, I'm like, wow, isn't that fascinating? So as I mentioned it to him, because I have a lot of high permission with this friend, permission's critical. I have a lot of high permission with this friend. Just let me see you. Come on, straighten up here, kiddo. And he did, and it immediately changed. So I don't know if that's acting as if. I mean, it was just taking a different posture.
Right.
There's this old phrase, though, fake it till you make it. You and I both know that doesn't work. Because the unconscious mind goes, oh, Sharon's just faking it. This isn't important. Let's just fake it and have fun. This doesn't mean anything. Right. Acting as if really means something. Acting as if I am confident. Acting as if I am an extrovert where I'm really an introvert. Anything like that. Acting as if is the critical thing. Because what happens to our unconscious mind then is we're like, oh. And one of the ways people say, truly, I'm very shy and introverted. I love to stay home. I love you guys. I write a lot of books. I love to write. I'm the quintessential writer who just alone. I love it. But how do I get out there and speak to large groups, travel around the world speaking? Well, number one, I geek out about this stuff. But number two, I have a friend in my world that gives whole new meaning to the word extrovert. The whole word is capitalized in his world. And in my world, the whole I, an introvert, is, that's capitalized. So I just have watched him. What does he do in certain situations? And I step into those behaviors that he does. And it's remarkable. My mind follows along. My energy follows along. Everything is just swings into step because that's as if.
Well, right, and you're not even acting as if you're creating, that is your reality that you're stepping into. It's like, as all of these options of who I might be at any given time, they're all very real. They're just choices. And so you step into this choice rather than that choice. It's all about, you feeling like you own that part of your power, right? You're not pretending like you could possibly be like this. This is who I am right now. This is that option that I have in my behavior that I'm going to choose.
Well,
but it's all
sometimes we don't know what those look like, so we have to find someone in our world and pattern after them.
Yes, no, I love that idea.
Every time Beth steps out on stage, she does this. I think that's so cool. It really shows confidence and grace and poise. I'm going to take those behaviors and play with them and try them on and see how I can use those same behaviors. And can I create that same energy that Beth creates on stage?
Right.
And I think that's what I love.
That was one of the things I was thinking of too, is I've seen her when she's performing doing this.
And it's always so open, and it's sort of like, I'm here for you.
Let me offer this to you. I'm offering this to you, right?
Yes.
Come accept this. Yeah, which is fun.
Now, if you do public speaking with that gesture Beth uses so beautifully all the time, is know that oftentimes you can get an audience to feel great about themselves. Maybe you're there to even deliver bad news, but you can talk, isn't it a beautiful day? And you're using this open jet. You've just assigned beautiful to the whole audience. And that's what Beth does so beautifully.
You guys, thank you.
Oh, you guys.
What I was getting from, your conversation was that we're using the I ams. I am.
Absolutely.
I am like my friend who isn't afraid of any of this kind of stuff, and I'm that. So in the process of taking the I am, you become it. And
right.
I am that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That too.
I am that. Yeah.
And that is so powerful. And people say things like, like, oh, I could never do that. It might feel awkward the first, second, third time. It might feel slightly awkward, but I could tell you the more you do it, the more it just becomes a natural tool in your toolbox. Yeah. So when I want to present this information to a large audience, I just pull these tools out of my toolbox and it becomes completely natural. So yeah, at first it might feel slightly awkward, but riding a bike felt awkward when you first tried it too. So,
Cynthia, when I first had, my first engagement with a symphony orchestra, I used just the smile. And the minute I smiled, I walked out onto the stage, kind of petrified actually, but I smiled, and that one body language transformed my whole body. And I believe.
Isn't that fascinating?
I believed, and the people smiled back. So that really helped a lot. Right. And then I was comfortable. So.
Well, gosh, doesn't that go full circle to the message that was received as the message you gave?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
With just a smile, right? Yeah. I
learned early on in my interviewing skills, especially on video, is right before they hit record or you step out on stage, do a forced laugh, a giggle.
Right.
And you might have to force it.
I learned that too in public speaking. Yeah.
But
laugh.
it opens your eyes and it just changes all the energy around you. So yeah, it's great. And it happens so fast. That's the thing that interests me, that fascinates me. 2 deep breaths before you step out on stage. Your brain is thinking clearly again. The butterflies are flying in formation. It just takes 2, maybe 3 deep breaths.
I like that. Butterflies flying in formation.
Absolutely. Well, no, that's a great thing for people's toolboxes. As people have to speak in front of anybody, no matter what size the crowd, or perform in any way, or go to a meeting, or go to an interview, or anything. It's one of the things that I say. I've organized a couple of weddings, done wedding planning for a couple of people, and one of the things that I say is make sure you're breathing. Don't hold your breath. Breathe. It's amazing how nourishing oxygen is, and we should all know that. But when we're in a moment that's really tense, the first thing we tend to do is hold our breath out of anticipation for the unknown. And when the opposite, if we pull the other out of the breath out of our toolbox, it can just transform the whole experience, right?
I encourage them to deep breathe though, because sometimes when you just say breathe, they do a thing called what I call air stacking, and that's they take in a little breath, and then it's a half of an exhale, and then it's another breath, and it's a half of an exhale.
It's the next best thing to hyperventilation.
Exactly. They start getting a little dizzy and a little queasy. Not as fast as hyperventilation, but they do this, and you could kind of see the shoulders continuing to go up and up. And
absolutely.
up.
Deep, slowly.
Exhale.
Well, speaking of that, one of the things that you speak to is how we can have these things in our toolbox to actually diffuse stressful circumstances, and when there's some sort of confrontation or somebody is acting in ways that we feel the need to diffuse. What are those toolbox items that I think our audience would really love hearing about?
They're fascinating, but also please don't dismiss the power of them. Breathe deep and breathe slow, and extend your exhale. That is the #1 tool to diffuse anything. The minute we get stuck in fight or flight, you're high breathing, you're rapid breathing, and that's contagious. So let's say somebody, maybe they're not mad at us. Maybe we're in customer service and they're mad at the company, but unfortunately we said hello. What happens is, all of a sudden, whether it's at us or something else, we go into fight or flight, high breathing, our brain freezes. It's just all about, am I safe? Am I safe?
Taking it personally.
But if you know that you're not about to get hit, physical safety is fine, that this is just something that has to be diffused. Because I always say watch for the physical safety part first. But if you're very clear that your physical safety is fine, slow down your breathing is the best and fastest thing you can do. And I mean really slow it down to almost where you sound like you might just be a little bit slow, like I'm falling asleep. What's so fascinating is people then, two things happen. I could see it in Dagny's head is cocked, like, what is she doing? This is what happens, that you do something unexpected. See, they're not intending, maybe or not, to get this rise from you, but it happens, and unconsciously it's expected that you'll go into fight or flight, which becomes contagious, and their fight or flight ratchets up, and then yours ratchets up, and pretty soon it's a fight. But what happens when you do the opposite? Two things happen. Shock and surprise on the other side, so they're momentarily confused. And they have to stop being angry because they're like, okay, I got to reassess. I didn't expect that response.
Exactly. I think that's when my head cocked it. In my mind, I was thinking that's like unintentional mirroring, where you're triggering the agitated person to do unintentional mirroring. That they will shift their energy to meet yours if you're not shifting yours to meet them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a high level languaging for it. That's absolutely what we do, is trying to get people to shift.
Oh, and everybody, this is Rusty.
Hi, Rusty.
Sorry. Okay.
But that's exactly what we're trying to do, is get them to shift in the positive way. If we can slow down their breathing, it's very fascinating. Then all of a sudden they have more oxygen. They can think more clearly. The brain begins to come up with solutions. The ears open when we have more oxygen. So everything happens. So the number one thing is monitor your breathing.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. It's unexpected. They expect you to get defensive and to yell back. That's what they expect. So it really is such an unexpected energy shift that it's very powerful.
Now, you bring up a good point. Sometimes they are so ratcheted up that your breathing is going to take a long time for them to even notice that you're there and or breathing. They're just angry. It's not about you. They're just angry.
Right.
The best thing to do at that moment, especially, like I said, if it's not about you, is to raise your voice to the same level that they are. I'm not going to yell in here, but just imagine this. You go, wow, really? I can't believe that happened to you. And see, I didn't say anything about me. That was all about them. It was all about third party. That happened to you. I never said, oh, I feel the same way. No, you ratchet up to their voice level. Wow, I can't believe that happened to you. So you're showing empathy with, you can't believe it.
Right.
Tell me more about that. And if they're still really angry, you go, I understand why you're angry. I'd be angry too if that happened. You see, and then once they feel like they've been heard, they'll shift.
Oh,
so
completely.
Yeah.
Completely. It's one of the things that I learned in my years of customer service was most people just never feel heard when they go seek customer service. They get a defensive response or a shutdown. Let me transfer you to somebody else, they never feel heard. That empathy is really lacking. And once somebody actually feels heard, it changes everything in the conversation and in the relationship and in the process. It's so simple to just listen, to just shut up and listen for a second.
And breathe. If you're breathing high and rapidly while you're listening, the unconscious mind starts to ratchet up. So when you're listening, you need to be consciously going, I'm listening, I'm taking mental notes, and I'm monitoring to make sure that I'm breathing low and slow and comfortably. And when we exhale, that's when our body relaxes. But if you extend the exhale, the other person begins to exhale even longer too, and their body will begin to relax. All we're trying to do is shift into relaxation, because that's when compromise and that's when conversation and solutions can be found, is when both people are in a relaxed state.
That's so true. And I think corporations have really keyed into this a lot, because every time I call Apple for customer service, that's the first thing they say. Oh, I can certainly understand how you feel that way. It happened to me, and that's just terrible that you can't do that in your business right now, and I'm going to help you. I mean, every time they call in, they have been trained, I guess, to empathize, which is really nice. I mean, then you know that they've heard you, and the part I really like is, and I'm going to help you, and they do. You know.
Right. Well, see, that's the key point. And they do.
And they
If you heard this script, I'm going to help you, and then I'm going to transfer you to Bev, and that gets lost. You know, you get hung up on before Bev ever answers the phone.
right.
So context
Right.
again.
And now I'm going to transfer you to Pakistan. Right.
Yeah.
I think
So
nothing-
you've been trained that they will follow through. Maybe the first time there might have been a momentary belief like, well, okay, I'll wait and see. But they've trained you to know, yes, they do follow through. Yes, they are there to help you. So your mind completely opens and feels safe again. See, the mind is always asking us two things. And we've got this internal Doppler radar going in our head all the time. It's just constantly doing this. And it's asking, number one, am I safe? That's its critical thing. It's constantly doing that. We don't think about that. You don't, unless you're in a place where you feel a little nervous, you know, you're not asking that in your home or something like that, right? But your mind is. Your unconscious mind is. The next thing it's asking, once it goes, okay, I'm safe, do I matter? And when Apple says, and I will help you, or I'm here to help, oh, I can relax. I matter.
I need it. Yeah. Definitely. So I have a question for you, because I heard you talk about this on another interview about people who recount experiences with great emotional intensity, like they're reliving it, versus people who recount, you know, information or circumstances, not like they're reliving, but like they're just retelling. And so I was wondering how we can handle the one where they're kind of reliving it. The retelling it one, I can, you know, usually just contribute my point of view, but when people are so emotionally charged when they're retelling, I wondered if there's anything that you would advise.
Well, we've just been touching on that. Now, understand, some people say with the idea of, are they reliving or are they retelling? And there's other phases during that shift in people's minds when something happens to them. And often we find it in trauma, but it could be in drama, it can be in excitement, it could be in anything. But let's just use the case of trauma for right now. They're reliving something that's traumatic. Oftentimes people think, well, that happened years ago. Why are they still reliving it? Because for whatever reason, they unconsciously haven't come to terms with it. And so when somebody's reliving it, listening is key. As we were just talking about, most likely you can't help. You're not, you know, most of us aren't psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever. But it's fascinating how we can help just by listening intently and asking what I call open-ended questions. There's a wonderful process called clean language, and it's all about uncovering people's personal metaphors. And we don't have time to go deep into it, but look it up. It's called clean language. And some of the questions you ask during clean language are all about supporting. And one of my favorite ones is when someone is ready, so they're reliving the story. You can tell a reliving story. You might see a little welling up of water in the eyes. There's quiver to the voice. You're getting emotionally drawn into this, you know. You're like, wow, this is compelling. She's really passionate about this, whatever is going on in your mind. That's reliving. And this is still really raw for them. Whether it's excitement, emotion, joy, sadness, it's still really raw for them. And one of the things we want to do is just ask them very open-ended questions. Tell me more. Wow, I never thought of that way. What would you like to have happen next? So just really empathizing type questions and not offering solutions. Because too often we offer solutions too quickly when people are reliving something. And that's sometimes then they get stuck in reliving because their own mind hasn't had a chance to solve it. And it's fascinating, just by open-ended listening with clean language, people often just all of a sudden, sometimes right before your eyes, they shift into retelling the story. Now, retelling the story is interesting to me. I work a lot with health and safety officers, and they run into this problem all the time. The story shifted, Sharon. They're lying to me. Not always. You have to be careful. Yeah, they may be. They may realize they're culpable for whatever just happened there on the factory floor, and they're CYA. But sometimes it was so traumatic in the reliving part that internally they renegotiated what happened. I think we've all seen this. The fish is that big when really it was that big. you know?
Officially called re-imprinting.
Yeah. That's what I call where you get to the retelling. And that's where the story shifts depending on the context. If it can become funnier, it can become more serious, it can become more dramatic. And usually it's just to make a point, to have a connection, to do anything like that. It's not that they're lying. They may know that the fish was really that big and now it's that big. But it's more about connecting at that time when they're retelling the story. And I think
but if you don't get a big enough reaction when you say it was this big, then you make it this big and watch your eyes get really wide, right?
And then all of a sudden there's a really cool connection between you. And that might spark the other person's story where the fish was humongous.
Right.
But I love
but they're not really lying.
Empathy there when you were talking. I think that's really the key. That's nice. I like
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Yeah, so be aware what somebody's reliving or retelling, because if you jump into your story, like when somebody's retelling, it's very common to jump into, and my fish was, it's very common to jump in, and that's okay because they're retelling it. There's fun and laughter, and it's just a story. There's very little emotional attachment to it. Yeah, it's a back and forth conversation.
One of the reasons I was kind of giggling when you were talking about that is that tends to be something that is listed as a kind of a pattern of conflict between the male and the female of the species. Is the man, women can tell their stories, but men need to just swoop in and fix it. Okay, so what's our solution? Right. What's the solution? What's the fix? So you can stop feeling like this and just move on, right?
That's a common problem.
Yeah,
that's a common problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
As women, if we've got special men in our lives, I often have just a little disclaimer. I just want you to listen.
Yeah, I don't need you to fix this. Just listen. Right. Right.
And if they know it, they're really cool at it. They're
right.
really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, let's talk a little bit. Gosh, this time has gone so fast. But I do want to, and I wanted to. We for sure want to bring up your books and have you tell us a little bit about your books. Before we do that, what are the patterns of when people are looking left or right or up or down? Because we know there are some very specific.
That's controversial, shall I say.
Oh, okay.
There are some studies that show that depending on where people look is sort of like where they are going, whether they're visually cued, auditorily cued, kinesthetically cued, but some people just have habits. Now, I find it fascinating that one of my sons is an absolute expert speller. I am not. I thank goodness for spell check because I am not. That's not my skill. But I just have to turn and look to him and say, how do you spell? And he immediately looks up and he sees the letters right there.
Right.
Some people are like that. So we can't read too much into that. Sometimes we say, well, they're looking down and to the left. So they're fabricating. They're looking down and to the right. And they're, no, let's see, down and to the right is fabricating, down to the left is logical.
Right brain is creative and left brain is the more clinical, right? The more
right.
Strategic. So to the right would be you're making the story up, and to the left would be you're recalling it. Is how I've heard that before. But I think you're right. There are always going to be variances to that. And
you might find cultural habits. There are a lot of cultures where making eye contact is important, and so they may not look at all. Their eyes are just always at you, and you're like, well, I don't know what to make of that. So it's fascinating to me, but I say the jury's still out on whether we absolutely have the studies to tell us that that's exactly what people are doing. There are some studies that say it is, and there are other studies that aren't. I just say we got to be so careful with a lot of conversation like this, because cultural biases, even if we're not of that culture, but we live within the culture. Maybe we weren't raised in that culture, but the culture we're living in currently, and we revert to something from our past cultures. Everybody walks around with just a whole card deck of cultures,
Right.
whether it's our
Some making eye contact. Yeah, some making eye contact is disrespectful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And spending, especially between genders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. The big thing about eye contact, I say most around the world, there are, like in certain cultures, be more careful. Middle Eastern and Asian cultures, be more careful. But in U.S., Canada, Europe, Latin America, when I'm talking, I say consistent but not constant. People like to know that you're looking them in the eyes, but they don't want to stare down.
Right.
So, when you're talking to somebody consistent, it's okay to blink. If you get distracted, it's okay to look away for a minute. Your eyes get tired, so, it's okay to look down.
Right. Just be authentic. Don't force it.
Yeah.
Yes, one of the jokes that a couple of different comedian friends of mine have had, been talking about is the kind of the hippie culture, the new age or hippie culture tends to want to do this long I see you kind of stare that's just like so inorganically long and wispy. It's like, oh please, just funny. Just kind of it's great fodder for comedians because it can just seem like I'm going to stare at you meaningfully with this intended awkward length of time. And
now you did it with a tipped head. That's slightly different. You can get away with a lot more when you're in a submissive mood, like a tipped head. That's very submissive, and my eye contact could be longer. But please be aware that two women can make constant eye contact, and there's nothing. It's just cool. They're just deep in conversation.
Absolutely.
Two men make too much eye contact, it can spark feelings of aggression, as it's very animalistic at that point. The stare down between two animals, they can cause, if you're starting to feel conflict and you're just talking to your buddy, realize maybe it's just too intense of eye contact. You need to back off of the eye contact. And between genders, then sometimes it can become uncomfortable, especially for the female, as if, wow, I'm just feeling like this is like too much eye contact. So there again, watch for the unspoken things, and if the other party is tending to look away or look like they're feeling uncomfortable, they may not physically back their body away, but they're backing their head away. Shift your eye contact. It's probably too intense.
So interesting.
You notice these things. Yeah, that's
And look, if you shift your eye contact and you were wrong, who knows you shifted it? I mean,
right? Who's gonna know?
Stop shifting your eye contact.
That's right. Who is gonna know? Well, gosh, I just love this topic. It's so much fun, and I think one of the most important things to take away, what we've been saying repeatedly, is that don't make everything black and white, because the world isn't black and white, and just know.
And have fun. Play with it. Have fun.
Yeah, good. Now they can, folks can learn more about your work with body language stuff and actually see all of your books at SharonSayler.com. Is that the best web address?
Right, absolutely. And if you do SharonSayler.com/gift, I have a great little ebook there. I think it's about 30 pages long, and with the 7, I'll get the title wrong. Anyway, it's the 7 things that you might be doing that are costing you sales in your career. It's all about these kinds of things that you might be doing. Not all of them are nonverbal. A few of them I've worked with so many people over the years, C-suite level people, and realize certain things that they might be saying as well as doing. So 2 or 3 of them are also verbal faux pas that you might want to consider, am I doing?
Well, that's great. Thanks for that gift for our audience. That's very thoughtful of you. The other thing that I want to make sure we talk about is Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters. And everybody, is PinkyChenille.com the best place for them to still go?
Oh, absolutely. The link to Amazon is there. And the hardcover book is in pre-order right now. The Kindle launched this week, and I've just been so thrilled with the response. I'm even getting these great rhyming reviews. It's a rhyming children's books. I wrote it for that early reader, age 3 to 5, but so many adults are enjoying the rhyme that, and understand when I say early reader, what that is about, that some of the language the early 3 to 5-year-old won't be able to read the word. This isn't see, spot, run.
Right.
This is more along the lines of Seuss, where you as the parent or the caregiver or the loved one cuddle up with your kids and read it to them.
Right.
But my illustrator, Olivia Cole, she did a fantastic job just bringing the rhyme to life. And I'm just thrilled that it's receiving such a great response. And as I mentioned, some of the reviews, people are rhyming back. I'm getting such a thrill out of reading.
That's so fun.
Such a creative world out there, you know?
That's so beautiful. Well, everybody, we're going to have the links to underneath the show here to both SharonSayler.com and to PinkyChenille.com. And so you can go pick up a copy, leave your own review on Amazon, and have some fun with that too. And what was your inspiration to write this book? This is your first kid's book, right?
My first kid's book. And
Yeah.
here again, well, a little bit more than chance, but when my first granddaughter was on the way, she came 3 or 4 months before she was born. I woke up in the middle of the night and the whole world of Addendale was in my head. Pinky Chenille was right there. I don't know if you've ever had that happen, but I always keep a journal by my bedside, and I just pulled out my pen. And now the story is obviously morphed in the 4.5 years I've been writing it. I had to learn as a nonfiction writer, it is or it isn't. You know,
Right.
it's pretty,
Right.
there's research and it's pretty.
Right.
factual.
What's my proof of this? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Fiction was a whole new world I had to learn. And then especially early reader and rhyming added another layer to it. But yeah, then so I knew that we were going to be blessed with a little girl by then. And I don't know what happened. It just, the whole story was in my head. The whole world was in my head. And I've been writing it. Now she's 4.5. And I just think it's so wonderful when we read the book to her. Her name is Adeline, and the heroine in the book is Adeline. And I just laugh because she goes, she doesn't know it's her yet. she goes, she has my name. And I just love that. She has other
that's so
that
sweet.
have that name too. So
That's very sweet.
Yeah, what a blessing that story came to you. That's really nice.
it is. It's one of those things that when we're in tune, as you guys know, with the energy and the unconscious mind, amazing things happen. And
Yeah.
when those, what I call those blessed downloads happen, write them down. Because I'm not sure I would have remembered if I had just gone back to sleep.
Right. Well, it's like that intuitive hit thing, right? Trust it and take action on that, because it's very real and worthy of our attention, right?
Right. I always find some of the best things happen in those moments.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that you really pay attention to. It's like, I don't know where that came from, but wow.
What time?
Yeah.
Was it like 3 o'clock in the morning?
It was about 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they say those are really creative times.
Yeah, about 2:30 in the morning. I just popped out of bed. I was like, woke up completely awake. And then, of course, in this modern technology, what's the first thing you do after you write the story down? You run to the domain search to see if
Right.
if the domain's available.
Right. Absolutely. You got to go see if the domain's available. Absolutely. Isn't
I
that
know, that's crazy. I never would have thought of that years ago. But
right? It's the world we live in today, though, for sure. Oh my gosh, so funny. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. This has been so much fun, and Beth and I both just really enjoyed chatting with you, and
yes, I enjoy you too. We just laugh when we get together. I mean, we're talking serious here. You guys should see us when we're alone.
Yeah, and it's there's just so much juicy stuff here. Everybody, make sure to go to Amazon.com and or through SharonSayler.com and pick up a copy not only of the amazing Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, and that's Pinky Chenille, by the way.
And some people pronounce it Chanel, so there you go. I've heard
Chanel.
some people pronounce it Chanel,
Okay.
but we
nice.
here out in the West call it Chenille.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right. Yeah, Chanel wouldn't have occurred to me, but people call me Dagny and people call me Dagny, and My mama called me Dagny, so that's what I go with.
There you go.
Since I'm the fourth Dagny in the family, it kind of, I'll just leave it at that. Also, everybody pick up a copy of her book, What Your Body Says and How to Master the Message, because I think...
Well, let me give you a plug so you can see what it looks like. This is What Your Body Says, How to Master the Message. And that's available on Amazon too, or it's available on my website. I have a special over there on my website where you get it for, I can't remember. Go over the website.
Special on the website for a discount. Well, heck yeah! And so while you're at that website, SharonSayler.com, don't forget to pick up your free gift that she's giving
right
over there as well. So, thank you again very much. Do you have like a final thoughts you would want to share?
Oh, quit taking it personally. Stop taking yourself so seriously. Enjoy life. It goes so fast. It just goes so fast. As the more I turn around, I'm like, holy moly. So spend time enjoying the things. That's a critical thing.
Yeah, enjoy the moment.
Absolutely.
Great.
We're told that a lot, but I think we learn that really late in life.
I think
children's books that are coming out explaining it, they'll learn it earlier. So
yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, great, and to our audience, of course, thank you. We always really appreciate you checking in and connecting with us on our shows. And Beth, as always, love you, buddy.
Thank you, Dagny. Bye, everybody.
And so, yeah, until next week, peace out.
Stop. No, it's recording.